The sport of football has become nearly synonymous with Thanksgiving, just as much as, say, turkey or togetherness with family. And in line with that, the NFL, they had their annual Thanksgiving Day batch of games. We had a historic matchup between the Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions calling back to the beginning days of Thanksgiving Day games. The Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants, two teams who've had very disappointing seasons, had an interdivisional clash. And a dominant Green Bay Packers team faced off against a red-hot Miami Dolphins unit. We're going to be going over every game and takeaways for each team in 3 words or less. Thank you for tuning in. This is State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Beginning with the first game between the Bears and the Detroit Lions, and we're going to start off with the Chicago Bears. My main takeaway, and this has come to fruition as well, is Eberflus is out. There were many people who were critical of the Bears' decision to even keep Eberflus in the beginning, and that has really showed this season. Because at the end of the day, Eberflus does have some value as a defensive-minded head coach. But the Bears, the situation they put themselves in with that roster, where they draft a perceived generational prospect at number 1 at the quarterback position in Caleb Williams, and you get tons of skill position players, especially at the wide receiver position around him, and DeAndre Swift at running back, very solid as well. You set the offense up for success as long as you have the right coach for that. And ultimately, Eberflus has not been beneficial to Caleb Williams' development, and that is really the priority for this team right now. And we even saw it in this game. He has had moments where he's just taking the team out of games. He had bad clock management this time around, and it could have cost the Bears. So my takeaway for them is that Eberflus is out, and that has been the case now. He's been fired from the Chicago Bears organization. And ultimately, we'll see how the interim head coach does. But in general, Eberflus was not the proper guy for the development of your perceived generational prospect quarterback. And as a result, the Bears are now fully committing to that and letting go of Eberflus and moving on to the next generation in Chicago. Now for the Detroit Lions, I am here to say offense wins championships. The old adage has always been that defense wins championships, and that still rings true. There can be very dominant defensive teams. One that comes to mind recently is, while Peyton Manning, of course, had a great first year in Denver, during that 2015 Super Bowl run, he was not the same quarterback that he once was, and that team was really just carried by their defense ultimately. And then recently, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a couple years ago with Tom Brady, they defeated the Chiefs due to their defense suffocating the Kansas City Chiefs offense in that Super Bowl. But in general, we've seen a lot more high-powered offenses recently, and that's just kind of the way the league is shifting. And the Detroit Lions, even with the rise in offensive-minded teams, are ahead of the curve. They have 2 great running backs who play super well off of each other. They have a quarterback who once had a chip on his shoulder after that Stafford trade, playing some of the best football of his career for the Lions. They have one of the most talented receivers in the entire league in Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as some other promising wide receivers, as well as perhaps the best O-lineman in the league in Penei Sewell. Offense is absolutely the bread and butter for this team, and the sky is the limit for them, so offense wins championships for the Detroit Lions. Moving on to the next game, this one was between the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. Starting off with the New York Giants, you have a dysfunctional franchise. That's really the only way to describe it. Ultimately, you kind of have to move off of Saquon in the offseason because you pay Daniel Jones all that money, but Daniel Jones isn't even your quarterback anymore. And ultimately, that contract, he wasn't worth it to begin with. He always just been an average QB. In the past 2 seasons, he hadn't even managed to be that. And so then you also give him sky-high expectations just because of the money that you're paying him. He has to perform better, and he doesn't. He performs even worse, and you have to let him go. But at the same time, it comes down to the franchise in general and the whole organization because they didn't set him up for success very well. But loss of Saquon obviously hurts because he's going to be a huge factor. Defense, they're going to be keyed in on him. And the drafting Malik Neighbors was good, but before that, you really didn't have many good wide receivers. So the loss of Daniel Jones, a lot of it is a result of his on-field play, but some of it is just the organizational failures around him. And then obviously you do lose Saquon, and he's been doing so well for the Eagles this year. And for the Giants in this game particularly, you went to Tommy DeVito last week, you go to Drew Lock this week. None of them are really capable of putting up numbers. And in the modern NFL, it's so quarterback-centric, and you don't even have one that you can really trust to go to. And that's just a product of organizational failure over the years in a dysfunctional franchise. The sky is not, the future is not bright right now for the New York Giants. They have the ability to turn it around, but it's not looking good with the way that roster is currently constructed and trying to find a new lot of everything. For the Dallas Cowboys, even in spite of winning this game, my main takeaway is still not your year. Well, they came out with a win most recently. They are still third in the NFC East and just barely defeated the New York Giants 27-20. Micah Parsons was very confident. I believe it was after the game. And it's good to get a win on Thanksgiving, but ultimately this has been a year of disappointment for the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott wasn't playing up to his contract, and then he goes out and he gets injured. CeeDee Lamb has had a little bit of a down year. He's still been very good for them. Ezekiel Elliott in his return has not looked good for the Cowboys this year. This was I look at it as kind of a welcome home, Zeke. This can be a good final season for you to go and retire, but he has not performed up to par for the Dallas Cowboys this season. And this is a franchise that no matter what they do, just can't seem to get over the hump, and it's been the same case this year. A lot of it can come down to injuries, but it's still not your year. And last up, we have the game between the Green Bay Packers and the Miami Dolphins. Starting off with Miami, my takeaway here is warm weather team because we've seen it consistently. There's been some criticism on Tua for it as well. It wasn't really his fault this game. He had over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. But this team consistently, whether it's in the playoffs or whether it's just this game, they consistently struggle to go up north and go into these colder stadiums and win games. And that really just comes down to the fact that they're used to playing in warm conditions, and as a result, sometimes they falter when it matters most in colder stadiums, and that's going to be the case a lot of the time. Cause nowhere's going to be as warm as Miami is right now in terms of the temperature, especially in the AFC. The top teams, the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs aren't as up north. The Baltimore Ravens. You're going to have to face these cold teams if you really want to make a run in the playoffs, and there's no guarantee that the Dolphins even make the playoffs, especially with the way things are looking right now. But in general, you do have to do something about it because you can't consistently go into these cold stadiums and just lose games. Like this could have been a very pivotal game for the Miami Dolphins. 6-6 is very different from 5-7, but they dropped to 5-7 against the Packers. And you just can't allow that if you want to win when it matters most. Ultimately, your temperature shouldn't matter that much, but for the Miami Dolphins, what we've seen in recent years is it absolutely has. And last up to end it on a positive note, for the Green Bay Packers, Love is back. He has now gone 2 straight games without throwing an interception, and that was an issue that really plagued him start this season. Obviously, it kind of draws comparisons to last year, where through the first half of the season, it looked like he wasn't the guy. And then second half of the season, even that player fund, he looks amazing. He looks like a truly special quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And it looks like they've went and done it again. They found their franchise guy. But then to start the season, it was a little bit rocky for Jordan Love again. And he gets a little bit of a pass because a lot of quarterbacks this year have kind of had down years. So that's not necessarily on him. Not all of it, at least. Defenses are just kind of figuring out the passing game the way it currently stands. But now Jordan Love has gone 2 straight games without an interception. And despite missing multiple games, he is 6th in passing touchdowns despite missing multiple games. And yes, obviously there are those interceptions that kind of, can take away the credit of that and the impact of that touchdown. But he's been really clean the last 2 games, been really safe with the ball. And Love can make risky throws. A lot of times his completion percentage is quite high, and he trusts himself to make these risky throws, and sometimes it ends up being a pick. But overall, he's just not afraid to put the ball in tight windows. And sometimes that leads to interceptions, but a lot of the time, and what we've seen in the past 2 weeks, is that when he's on, he can make throws that a lot of quarterbacks in the league just can't, or they might not have the confidence to, and he absolutely does. And that's what I like the most about Jordan Love moving forward, is that he does have the confidence. He does believe that he is the franchise guy for the Green Bay Packers. And with that, obviously all the quarterbacks in the NFL are talented, but it's the confidence that can really take you to the next level. Obviously, some are more talented than others, but confidence is huge. in professional sports in general. And Jordan Love has loads of that. And this young core, the Green Bay Packers have a very young offense, especially for them to just grow together and build chemistry. And the Packers are 9-3 right now. That's only going to do wonders for them, not just this season, but moving forward. And Love is absolutely your franchise quarterback, in my opinion. And we really saw that this Thanksgiving Day game. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I've been your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening.